Beautiful Dagmar, listen and tell me, you are the strongest I ever did see. Beautiful Dagmar, Jiminy Ves, you are the best one that there ever is.
Well, you know, it is amazing because I haven't been on the air for 33 years, and that people still show up. It's just amazing to me, but it's wonderful.
When people reach a certain age, they look back on their youth and say, oh, those were better times. You know, it's remembrances, nostalgia. And I'm still around to help them, relive that fun time.
When you talk about Stan, people say, oh yeah, I remember him. My gosh, it's amazing because it's been what, 45 years for me. And these are memories, but these people remember that grew up with him.
I remember Seattle, a rediscovery of what made us one of America's most livable cities, told by the people who saw it change, who made it change. I Remember Seattle is hosted by Lowell Deo. Our guest is Stan Boreson, who remembers the golden age of Seattle television.
Well, anyway, I'd just like to say musically, this is a lovely way to spend a Saturday.
Children's television host Stan Boreson still pulls a crowd. 30 years after his hugely popular show, King's Klubhouse, went off the air. Only today, the children look a little different.
Those are the baby boomers that used to watch me, and they're in their 40s. They're in their 50s now, and so I do a more of a grown-up show now when I go out, but I do throw in a couple of things, you know. If you think you're really happy, clap your hands, you know, that one, and a few other things. But mostly I'm doing grown-up shows for all those little kids that are now parents themselves.
Venture back to a time when clowns and cowboys ruled Seattle's airwaves, and catch up with some of Seattle's other legends of childhood.
Hi, everyone. My name is J.P. Patches. Everyone say hi, J.P. Hi, J.P.
Middle-aged Patches pals still fill auditoriums to catch the clown in action.
This is David. Everyone say hi, David.
Today, they're seeing their idol, J.P. Patches, and several other kids' TV legends perform at Seattle's Museum of History and Industry.
Ketchikan is a Marine. This is a Maureen.
Will you just hold that out there?
You understand how this game works, Maureen?
Yes.
You live in Seattle?
Yes.
Are you married?
Yes.
You have children?
Yes.
Are you still in diapers?
The funny thing is, I'm making more appearances now, 22 years after the program went off the air, than I was then. It's unbelievable, because all the little 8 and 9-year-olds are now 40 and 50-year-olds, and I'm having birthday parties for them.
The hosts are enjoying a revival as nostalgic adults turn back time with one not-so-simple phrase.
Zerodocus, moochicrocus, alamaluzabub. That's the secret password that we use here.
And Zerodocus, moochicrocus, alamaluzaband means now you are a member of...
Newcomers to the Northwest may not know the names Stan Boreson, Chris Wheatus, or Ruth Prinz, but for thousands of Northwest baby boomers, the names Stan Boreson, J.P. Patches, and Wanda Wanda are like rock stars in the golden age of children's television. But these local stars learned fame could be fleeting.
It was just one of those sudden things that I remember the memo saying we're no longer doing the Stan Boreson show. And
we're going to show you how local television hosts didn't get a lot of money to work with.
We did our best to plug the products, you know. That's what we were there for.
How they helped local television stations rake in lots of money.
I was amazed what they could do with all the limitations that we gave.
Only to become victims of their own popularity in the end.
That went for 12 years, until 49 to 67 was when the program went off the air. and we were replaced by a program called Dark Shadows, or some kind of a kooky thing. I didn't think, I thought I was better than that. Yeah.
And where are they now?
I don't know.
I think they're off the air.
Yeah.
And here, why was Benjamin Franklin out in the rain flying his kite? Well, Benjamin Franklin was out in the rain flying his kite because his wife took away his rubber duck. Come back there. All right. And it goes on here. So foggy in the studio today. How can you tell if a pearl is cultivated? No. How can you tell if a pearl is cultured? Well, I'll tell you, if you can tell if a pearl is cultured, you take her out to dinner, and if she slurps her soup, drop her like a hot spot and start taking out Mabel.
Pop one, Lawrence. I think I will.
We did some of the corniest stuff that ever lived, but and got away with it. But it was what we enjoyed doing. We'd get the giggles, and we'd start laughing, and that some dumb thing, and of course it was all live, and you didn't get to redo anything. It went out, and if you made a mistake, that mistake went out too.
Make up.
Not so heavy on the makeup, please.
Everett native Stan Boreson didn't set out to become one of Puget Sound's first television stars. The University of Washington graduate fell into it.
I think the interesting thing, too, is that when you started this all those years ago, I can't imagine you had a set path saying, I'm going to be a children's television star.
I took personnel management and accounting at the University of Washington, and I got out, television came to Seattle when I was a junior at the U. And so I was in a club called Club Encore out there, and it was kids working their way through college, with dancers and singers and magicians and so on. And Lee Shulman came out there and interviewed some of us, and we put on an hour show on King. And afterwards, he asked Art Bardoon, this pianist, and me if we'd like to have our own 15-minute show, Thursday nights, 15 minutes. But it never went 15 minutes because we didn't have a network anyway, so if we had 23 minutes worth of songs, we did 23 or 25 or 31, whatever. And that's how we started out.
Stan spent 6 years perfecting his musical talent on a King TV variety show.
And we got $25 a week, which we split, $12.50 apiece. That's when we started out in 1949.
The young accordion player never knew this job opportunity would turn into a lifelong career.
We're thinking about a King's Clubhouse type of show where all the kids like clubhouses, up in the tree houses or whatever. So we'll create a clubhouse for you down here on a set, and we'll get some cartoons, and we'll be a children's entertainer. So I thought that sounded great too, so that's how I started down there.
In the early 1950s, King's Clubhouse was one of many children's TV programs propping up across the nation. A boom in kids' shows grew out of a need for low-cost, local programming.
When they proposed King's Clubhouse, what did you have to model this on? Was there a model out there?
No, there was no model. There were cowboy shows, and like down in Tacoma, there was Brakeman Bill, and he did the train deal, and of course JP was at the dump, and so we just created it from nothing and started out, and we added stuff, as we came to mind.
I have one of Uncle Torvald's good numbers here I want to sing for you before we have our first cartoon. Which
Stan had to create a persona and a theme for his show.
And here's one of
I walked down the hall of King one day, and Elliot Brown, who was Wonder Wonder's organ accompanist, he met me and he said, Stan, what your clubhouse needs is a theme song. So I'm going to write a whole bunch of gibberish words, and if the kids can remember those words, then that's their password into the clubhouse meeting every day.
The entertainer drew much of his humor from his Scandinavian heritage.
Being I'm Scandinavian, I do the Scandinavian business, and I used to have on the program my Uncle Torvald.
This is your Uncle Torvald with a lovely bedtime story for you.
And then I became Aunt Lena, too, and I'd put a wig and a dress on and everything. So Uncle Torvald and Aunt Lena were two of my characters, and she was the famous painter.
Stan teamed up with Doug Setterberg, who had hosted a show on Como TV. The two performers combined their talents to concoct Swedish-inspired gags. Boreson and Setterberg recorded several Doug and Stan albums for national record labels. In 1965, the successful act seemed doomed when doctors found cancer in Setterberg's throat.
We were recording our third album when he got very hoarse. And I said, Doug, that's not normal, you know. And he couldn't hardly talk after we sang one or two songs, and so it took several days to do this recording. And so he decided that he better go check with a doctor. Well, they found out, this was on a Friday night, he found out that he had cancer of the throat. And for a radio announcer and singer, you know, that's disaster. And so, by golly, they took his vocal cords and larynx out on Monday morning. It was that critical. And they lifted everything out, and they got all the cancer. And then he had that mechanical thing that, you know, makes that noise.
Welcome to my poet's corner in the round.
Before long, Setterberg returned to the show with an electronic voice box and 3 new characters inspired by his new mechanical voice.
Is it coming along now pretty good?
It's beginning to coming along, but I'm having a little trouble with your ears.
Your what?
I said I'm having a little trouble with your ears.
What did you say?
I'm having a little trouble with your ears.
Oh, that's funny thing. I'm having a little trouble with my ears. I can hardly hear what you're saying.
Stan also had help from his 2 lackadaisical dogs, Nomo and Miss Mo.
Look at them there, so excited about the program and the fun that they have down here.
You know, that wonderful,
girls,
wonderful.
Look excited. Girls, look, wake up. That's it. Look excited.
That's
it.
bird.
Now you wake up, Miss Moon. Look.
We'd all come up, they'd walk through the door, and this little dog would walk through the thing and sit down or stand up on the desk, and never did anything. And people could yell at him, but he'd just sit there and watch. And he was just, I wish he could talk. He must have seen lots of things, but we just sat there.
It didn't take long for King's Clubhouse to find its niche, and for Stan Boreson to start drawing crowds of faithful fans outside the TV studio.
They'd put us out in flatbed trucks in these different gas stations. Clipper Oil was the gas station company, and we saw that the crowds were starting to get bigger and bigger, and pretty soon we were getting several hundred people out. So we knew then that there was a lot more television sets in the neighborhood.
It was really wonderful to see how them, because he was really more fun with the kids when he was outside the studio, because he could do a lot of things. He had the squeeze box, what I know is his accordion, and kids really played to him.
It may have been just a kids' TV show, but it was a show that bonded many young fans through great distances and tough times.
Say, isn't it lucky that it rained last night?
And I got to tell you an interesting thing. A fellow was over in Vietnam in one of these big communal showers over there, and he started singing that song while he was taking a shower, and about 10 stalls down the way, a kid joined in, and they were both singing, Zero Dacus, Mucha Crocus, and one peeked his head out, and he said, where are you from? He says, Tacoma. He said, where are you from? He said, Olympia. So that's how they met. The mother wrote me that little note. That's how they met in Vietnam.
All right, boys and girls, we're glad that you were able to come to see the Cartoon Theater today. And here is your host from the J.P. Patches program, is J.P. Patches. Now let's have a nice round of applause. I'll tell you about that. Why don't you take that bucket and put it someplace where it's not going to bother you?
Yep.
That bucket it's been just trouble. Now, if you just take that bucket and you're to put it someplace where it's not going to be any trouble, you can do this thing and you can have dignity. But you've got to...
It's not going to bother me there, Sam. Goodbye.
Another local star says his show did its share of bonding. But J.P. Patches says most days it mainly fell apart on live television every day.
Our show was never scripted. It was always ad-lib. And there were times when we did not know what we were going to do. And I'd start the program, and sometimes someone would come to my rescue, like the audio man might put in some crazy sound effects. So I'd think of ways of explaining why these things were happening.
Before he became J.P. Patches, Chris Wheatus honed his act in Minnesota.
It was called Lunch with Casey, and I became this character with the chef's hat, and I had a funny accent. I used to talk, like this, say, "Hey, Casey, boy, I got a beautiful lunch for you today."
Minneapolis theater, radio, and television set the stage for several of Wheatus's most memorable characters.
Hi, Rocket Rangers. I became Captain 11. I was Joe the Cook and Chuck Wagon Chuck and Captain 11.
But it was a surprise opportunity that led him to take on his most popular character.
There was another person, Darrell Lobb was his name, who was J.P. Patches. And he quit to go to a competing station, KSDP. Unfortunately for him, he did not own the name J.P. Patches. The station had originated the character and the name, and he wasn't allowed to take the name.
Chris put on piles of white-face paint and stepped into the big clown's shoes. But it would take more than makeup to make a legend.
Well, Monday morning came, and I went on as J.P. Patches. Well, after the program, I talked to the switchboard operator, and she said the station was flooded with calls saying,
"Take that guy off the air. That ain't J.P. Patches."
But Chris Wheatus's spark and knack for clowning around eventually won over a picky public and won him a chance to take his act west.
I did that character for about a year, and Fred came to Seattle to put Channel 7 on the air. And he called me in December of 1957 and said, "Would you like to come to Seattle and do a couple of kid shows?"
In February 1958, Seattle got its first whiff of J.P. Patches, the mayor of the city dump. It aired on Cairo TV, Channel 7.
It looks like a fancy.
There we go.
Wheatus soon learned he wasn't the only clown in town. He found strong competition in Stan Boreson.
Uncle Torvald's version of Cinderella.
I thought he was terrific, and he was a real institution here. Large Scandinavian population, of course, he was very popular with them. But then he was a good sense of humor and fun music and things like that. But he didn't do bits like I was doing. He didn't, a lot of times I had a running bit, and I don't think he did that, at least from the little bit that I saw.
There was room for the two children's TV giants, but as Wheatus tells it, there wasn't much room for planning on his show.
We would talk before the program started, We'd say, "What are we going to do today?" We'd sit around and say, "I don't know. Hey, it's your turn." We'd think of something sometimes. Sometimes we'd start a contest. I mean, that was always a good filler, like a joke contest. Send me a joke. If I read it on the air, we'll send you a prize.
The clown got help from his crew, who played some of the wackiest characters around.
I had to explain it, so naturally I had to blame it on someone, so I blamed it on Boris S. Wart, the second meanest man in the world. And the kids would ask me when I was on appearances, they'd say, "If Boris is the second meanest man in the world, who's the meanest?" And I'd say, "I think you know." They'd go, "Yeah, my principal, Mr. Peterson." They'd come up with somebody.
Bob Newman played the part of Boris S. Wart, and later adopted more than a dozen other characters.
Boris S. Wart, the second meanest man in the world. It is I, and I'm here. That's it. Too bad.
Bob was a kick. You never knew what he was going to say and do. I'll give you an example. The birth of Gertrude. I didn't have anyone playing Gertrude. It was just a name that I had selected for a telephone operator. And I'd pick up the phone. I'd say, Gertrude, let me speak to so-and-so. Well, one day I picked up the phone and said, Gertrude, and Bob was a floor director, and he was off camera, and he answered in his high-pitched voice, yes, what is it? I can't do it, and we started laughing. And after the program, I said, you know what, Bob? I said, why don't you come on the program tomorrow as Gertrude? So the next morning, there was a knock on the door, and I said, who is it? Gertrude! I said, boys and girls, we're going to see what Gertrude looks like. So Bob walked in. He had the mop and everything, and he had this dress on. However, underneath his dress, he had 2 huge balloons. I mean, they were huge. And as we were talking, all of a sudden, one of the balloons started drifting south. And Bob said, up there, big fella! Oh, I figured, man, we're off the air. So we weathered that program, and I stripped Bob of his balloons.
Bob Newman created many memorable roles, such as Miss Smith.
Knock, knock. Who's there? King Kong.
King Kong who?
King Kong played ping pong with a ding dong in Hong Kong. Ping pong with a ding dong in Hong Kong. See you later.
Was that joke it was a... Right away you have 2. You must pay the consequence. I was hoping you'd get or even a... But you did wind up with 2. So, no more joke. Sorry.
He's also remembered as Ketchikan the Animal Man, who currently performs with J.P. Patches. It's no surprise the crew had as much fun on set as the home audience did just watching.
They consider it their show because Cairo never really got involved in it until later on. They did everything until he finally said, hey, this is a pretty good show.
It was a team. It was a team effort. The crew loved doing the show. They looked forward to it, you know, and it was remarkable. And everybody got along with everyone. It was just amazing.
Zero doctor, boots rock, calabalooza bub. That's the secret password that we use down at the club. Zero doctor, boots rock, calabalooza band. Now you are a member of King's TV Club with Stan and Nomo and Hey You and Foghorn and Graham, Torvald, Phineas Frog, and all the Klubhouse gang.
Wonder, wonder is my name. Oh, boys and girls, I'm glad you came.
By the early 1960s, Seattle had a variety of children's shows to watch on every channel. Another popular character on King TV was Wonder Wonder.
Today, will he, won't he, will he, won't he, what do you say? I think perhaps...
One time I know that she was on the air and she was interviewing this lion cub, and right on the air, the lion cub decided to take a bite out of her wrist, and she grimaced, but went on with the show. The show must go on.
Seattle toddlers grew up listening to the storytelling of Wonder Wonder, played by Ruth Prinz.
She doesn't perform anymore at all, but she's in her mid-80s, and my wife was down at the Women's University Club the other day, and she was down there taking tap dance lessons.
Youngsters also sang along with Sheriff Tex. The Western-themed show, hosted by Texan Jim Lewis, was the very first children's TV program in Seattle.
Well, hello there, devotees.
He was coming through. He was a big Western entertainer, and he had a big orchestra and everything. And when he came to Seattle to perform at the Palomar Theater, Rainier Beer Company got in touch with him and wanted to have him stay in Seattle and create a show called Rainier Ranch, because they sold Rainier beer, and that was the Rainier Ranch was the name of his show. And he had Western people as guests every week and so on. Janie Tucker was his vocalist, and he was very, very popular around here for many, many years.
And you just sit back and relax and enjoy.
Sheriff Tex began in 1953 and ran for 7 years on King TV. Wearing overalls and a railroad hat, Brakeman Bill hosted a kids show on KSTW Channel 11.
Brakeman Bill had a fellow on there called Crazy Donkey. I forget his first name. His last name was Reed. Very, very funny.
Warren Reed played the sidekick character Crazy Donkey. Bill McLean, also known as Brakeman Bill, entertained children from 1955 to 1975. At the time, it was the longest-running children's show in the U.S., and Brakeman Bill still has a following today.
At the time that show went on, there was only one television station in the whole state. That was Channel 5, where Stan Boreson was king. And then we came along with Channel 11 and CBS, and went on the air with the old black and whites, and I had a train set, and I had Popeye and Bugs Bunny cartoons. Remember those?
When he went off the air, he asked them if they had any other jobs open, because they were taking the children's show off. And they said, well, we need a kind of a promotional manager. And so they hired him on as in promotion to promote the shows down there. And he kept that job going until he's retired. He's retired now.
Sailed into the harbor and he smiled at what he found.
Kids could discover the wonders of the natural world with Captain Puget on Como TV Channel 4.
Captain Puget is his name.
Don McCune hosted this kids' TV show in the 1950s and early 60s. He often had Ivor Haglund of Ivor's Clams appear on the show and sing songs.
He passed away a few years ago now, but he had a wonderful show. Now his was nautical, and he'd get Ivor from the Acres of Clams to come over and sing sea shanties with him, you know. That was his gimmick.
Just one more thing to say to you, smooth sailing, and bye for now.
Oh, it's very important that you should learn to spell. You know, you might be a great success. You might do very well. If only you could learn to spell.
Few would argue these shows had much educational value, but the programs did try to teach children good behavior.
It doesn't hurt a bit to be polite.
What I did is I used to write songs that I hope would teach the kids to be the right kind of kids. So I wrote one called It Doesn't Hurt a Bit to Be Polite, It Only Shows That You Are Very Bright. And I wrote another one called Pick Up After You. Let's put things away when we are through. There's a closet, there's a drawer, don't leave messes on the floor. You know, pick up. And the mothers, I don't know if the kids like these songs or not, but the mothers just loved it.
Well, I had a checklist, you know, that I would go over, but I kind of did it in a humorous way. I wasn't a goody two-shoes, and I wasn't preaching. I'd go through the list, you know, mind Mommy and Daddy, and go down. I'd say, now, you remember, kids, you know what'll happen if you follow the rules? Your mom will faint.
But fainting wasn't the greatest danger these shows posed to some young fans.
I'd open the closet, and then they'd turn on the traffic that was just going 80 miles an hour through the Battery Street Tunnel, you know. And so I'd look on, oh boy, there's a lot of traffic in the Battery Street Tunnel today, isn't there, gang? You know, and then I'd close the door. Well, a policeman called me up one day, and he said, are you the one that tells the kids about what's going on in the Battery Street Tunnel? And I said, yeah. And he said, I wouldn't do that anymore if I were you. I said, why? He said, because we got 2 little 10-year-olds in there yesterday looking for the door to your clubhouse in the Battery Street Tunnel. So we quit doing that.
The shows had similar content, syndicated cartoons, jokes, and games. But the hosts never knew how great an impact they had on their viewers.
Today, I have adults that come up to me and say they learned so much from my program and this and that. So I'm learning things that I wasn't aware of, you know, back then. And I'm sure that's true of every children's host all over the country.
But profit-hungry TV stations saw how big an impact these shows had on viewers.
Singing, and I feel so great, I think I'm going to enjoy my favorite breakfast cereal, Kellogg's Corn Flakes. So come on right over this way, boys and girls, and I'll just put the...
Hey, what's the secret? What's the secret? What's the secret?
The secret? Hey, there's someone at the door. That's funny, there's no one there. Wait. The Kellogg's secret! I I've got it. He just reaches down and aims and... Hey, that's amazing. How did that happen? That isn't loaded.
Back in the 50s and 60s, children's shows integrated advertising into the program. Commercials became part of the entertainment.
I oftentimes, doing the commercials, believe it or not, they were more fun than the program, because we very seldom got a script from the agency, or they would just give us a simple 1 or 2 line. Maybe you could talk about Sunny Jim. There was a product here, Sunny Jim peanut butter, and we'd make up little skits, and unfortunately, fortunately for the client, they usually ran more than a minute,
Land of Goshen, kiddies. Old Grandma's seen a lot of new changes in her lifetime. The aeroplane, men on the moon, and of course the Miami Dolphins winning the Super Bowl. And here's something new that you'll enjoy. It's called Polka Pop.
We really had to wing it and ad-lib everything, including the commercials. We had to ad-lib all our commercials.
Soon the advertisers and station managers started seeing green.
But they were always loaded for commercials once they got into it. And at that time, the stations, it was a license to print money. And when that came in, whoa, we can do money with this one.
Some of the ads became running jokes.
Hostess Twinkies was one that we had good luck with. I had that one down pat because we nearly did it every day. And I'd get the dog in on that one, my Basset Hound. She'd be sound asleep in her bed, and I'd wave a Twinkie under her nose, and she'd open one eye, and then she'd open the other eye. That Twinkie would wake her up every time.
No-Mo and Miss-Mo didn't have to say a word to pitch a product.
We'd put those U.S. Kids on her, and then I'd ask her to walk over to me, and she would actually walk in those U.S. Kids, and the sponsor went crazy. He'd just keep buying more and more time, have the dog walk again, and the kids were really buying those Kids because No-Mo was walking on those Kids on the TV show.
Even some famous faces would make appearances to plug their brand name.
Colonel Sanders on once. And I said, well, Colonel, you're here in Seattle and Tacoma, meeting all the boys and girls. What do you think?
Well, let me tell you, JP, I went around to these places, and they're not doing the recipe that I gave them.
And I'm thinking, oh, my gosh. And there's the agency guys that they're pulling their hair. And I say, well, maybe there's slight differences,
No, he said they should be following.
And he was knocking his own product, So I finally got him calmed down.
It's this, spring time of the year. It's a beautiful time of the year when everybody is, thinking of poetry and things like that. And here in our first Clubhouse show, we wanted to get it started off with a real bang. And so we have secured the services of a well-known poet, Foghorn Peterson, who has the lighthouse up in Tatoosh. He was supposed to be here, but I suppose he's up there. He's probably sitting right out there on the beach in Tatoosh, practicing his poetry. Oh, I can hear, he writes the most beautiful stuff, doesn't he, Mo? I can hear him now.
I had to memorize everything that I did, nearly, because there was no teleprompters in those days. I had a blackboard on wheels, and it had a hole in the middle, and they put the camera through the hole, and then I could make a few notes above the hole and a few notes below the hole, and that would just be a cue line for me, and hopefully that I would remember the rest of it if I got that first line going.
The local stations may have raked in advertising revenue, but children's shows saw little of it. Veteran photographer Phil Sturholm remembers sparse resources in the early years.
And in King, we were in the basement of an old furniture store. Now, they had reconstructed everything, so you didn't know that it was an old furniture store, but that's how they found it. And they said, well, that was one of the biggest buildings around. But downstairs, they had big concrete pillars in the middle of our studio. So the cameras had to run around and bypassed every time you look at Stan or the news or anybody else. We could not get what we call a wide shot. You couldn't see the whole thing.
The studio equipment posed a unique challenge for the crew.
We didn't have zoom lenses at the beginning, so you couldn't zoom in, so you had to change lenses. And if you watch one of their shows, the director would say, all right, change to a different kind of the lens. They had to spin it. And they'd move this around, spin it, and these people were moving like crazy all the way through the half-hour show.
Watch those high or low flyers there.
In 1954, color TV revolutionized the way Americans watched their favorite shows. Still, the new technology didn't mean a flawless product.
The kinescope days. And we didn't know if anything turned out good till 2 days later when they'd film something. You know, now when I went down there and they were instantly replaying what we did in color to see if it was going to be okay, I couldn't believe it.
The only way we could record shows at the time before tape came in was called kinescope, which you taken a movie off a TV screen, which was horrible. Just, you almost didn't recognize the people.
1, 2, 3.
Color video allowed stations to record shows on tape, but very few episodes were saved.
Unfortunately, most of the programs I did were live. They weren't recorded. And the ones that were recorded, they used that same tape over and over again. They erased it because it was a big $300, 2-inch tape. And I had movie stars on. I had, so many people I wish I had. And what I considered really great shows.
Out of 18 years on television, King only was able to put together 2 one-hour shows. They'd erase the previous day and record. I don't know why they even bothered to do that, because it all went out live. But the only thing that they were able to save was when I was going on vacation. Mm-hmm. They would film ahead, and that's what the 2 one-hour shows are that is available now that King gave to me when I left the station.
So many priceless moments are gone forever.
Every now and then we'd have a real good show that I wish that they would have saved, because we really worked on some of them real hard.
But their memories live on. Stan Boreson and Chris Wheatus continue to sell copies of their surviving shows.
Gertrude.
Yeah. We'll see you later. Have a nice day, Julius.
Gertrude.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Well, only takes you half an hour to make another one.
Yes, I remember my birthday cake.
Oh,
you were so
boy.
graceful, Miss Twinkle Toes.
Oh,
you put your
boy.
foot into it. No, you put your hand into it.
That's
it
right.
looked like your foot.
You tripped me, Julius. You tripped me. Wasn't
No, I
my
didn't.
fault
No, I
at
didn't.
all.
No, I didn't. Yeah. Let's see. Well, we're halfway through the resolutions
Yes.
for 1979.
How am I doing?
Not very good, but you can improve. Anyone can improve themselves.
Well, that's good, Julius.
And everything was off the cuff. They didn't rehearse anything that I remember. They just walked down to the studio at 5 o'clock and started talking.
All the shows aired live. No rehearsals, no retakes, and no rewrites. And sometimes mistakes happened.
I was sitting on a stool, and my wife called the station. And she said, I have to talk to Chris. And the operator said, well, he's on the air now. She said, I know, I have a message for him. And the operator said, well, I'll go tell him. Okay. And you know what the message was? Your fly is open. Now, you'd think the cameramen or floor directors would tell me? No. That my wife had to call and tell me.
Even guys who made a living acting goofy had moments they'd rather forget. How would you guys feel about some of the songs you'd sing? Ones with nonsensical words or ones that were very juvenile? Was there ever any sense of embarrassment, or was it a privilege?
It depends on where I had to sing the song, I was mentioning that I went to this Mrs. Boeing, Bill Boeing's mother's 85th birthday, and she wanted me to sing this she says, I watch your show every day, and you sang this song, What Do the Animals Want for Christmas? And there's all her elderly friends standing around, you know, captains of industry and everything. And I stood up in front of all these big important people and sang, what do the animals want for Christmas? Santa Claus asked one day. It was so embarrassing. I nearly died, but I got through it.
Stan says he never got in trouble with management if he had a bad show.
Yeah, I had very, very great bosses that just left me alone. Nobody would ever send a memo down saying, why did you do this or do more of that? And that never happened in all the years I was a king. I had complete control over the show and did anything that I wanted, and I never got reprimanded if anything went wrong, and they were just great people to work with.
All these TV programs shared phenomenal success in the community. No one predicted the end was near.
Hurry on. Here I come. Why don't you help a little bit?
Don't be silly. Come on.
Oh,
There.
boy, this is heavy. Where are we now?
Pull it up there a little bit closer. That's good. Yeah,
There I am.
That's nice. Now, you got to...
What?
We're going to have to get the dingus out of there.
Oh, this is so long. I wish we could have taken a taxi cab this time.
Yeah, well, that's too bad. But there, okay. Now, you hold the ticket.
Yeah, all right.
Now, I think...
There's our boat now, Foghorn.
It should be coming in here any minute.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Look around for it.
Well, I don't know. Oh, yeah, I think I see it coming down there.
Is it that?
Yeah. Oh, be careful.
What is happening?
Look out.
Look. That's terrible. Oh, yes. Look at our boat is just coming.
Yeah.
Is that the one we was going on?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think we're going to have to postpone this part.
Let's go back and took a room at the hotel and wait till morning.
Go back and took a room. All right, that sounds good.
All right. Why don't you call a taxi? I hold the ticket.
You hold the ticket. All right, I'll call a taxi. As soon as I find the telephone here, Foghorn.
There it is. There it is.
Oh, good.
There it is.
Catch a pickle herring, put it in the barrel, never let it get away. Catch a pickle herring, put it in the barrel, save it for a rainy day.
After 12 years of silly songs and skits, Stan Boreson Show got the axe.
Stan, they just cut Stan away. One day they said, okay, we're not going to do a show anymore.
The move came as a shock to Stan and thousands of his fans.
They told me that at the end of December that the show was going off the air. And I guess, you know, a lot of it was economics. They could grab a series and run that in a half-hour time slot for a lot less than they could with the director and the entertainer and all the crew that had to be there to run that show. And so I think economics had a lot to do with it, because all the shows just eventually went off the air and they put on cartoons.
Oh, it was the telephone, our switchboard went up like a torch. How can you do this? Why should you do this? It's the only kids show in town, and we'll miss him.
Other TV hosts feared their show could be next.
I foresaw it as the end of kid shows because I was in close contact with my friends in Minneapolis, and the same thing was happening there. And it was happening all over. A lot of the reasons, the networks wanted that morning time slot where a lot of the kid shows were on the morning. NBC, CBS, and ABC, they wanted to get their Today Show or whatever it was. Then in the afternoon, there was a lot of syndicated programs that the station made a lot of money on. They didn't have to have a director. They didn't have to have a floor director. They didn't have to have talent. They didn't have to buy film, cartoons. They didn't have to do any of that stuff. So it was easy to pick up the phone and say, could we have reruns of the Mickey Mouse Club? And, so it was...
In this day and age, they say it's the bottom line.
Some saw it as the end of television's golden age. Gradually, as baby boomers grew up and sponsorship declined, stations saw no need for locally produced kids shows.
Everything changed. The tenor changed. The whole station changed. And all of its stations, not just King, everybody. And we looked at Seattle at a different viewpoint than we had before.
How'd you feel about that? Were you ready to go?
No, not at all. I loved what I was doing. I would love to have been doing it for many, many more years. But I was still entertaining and playing accordion, and then my wife Barbara and I started a tour company, and so we take tours all over the world now, and we're still doing that. We've been doing that for nearly 19 years now, so that's what keeps me busy.
The J.P. Patcher Show ran for another 14 years, but at times struggled to keep its spot on the schedule.
I only had a Saturday show for about a year, and then they Kyra received so much criticism about me being on just one day. Then I went back on Monday through Friday as well. And but I foresaw that the station, this one particular person at the station, wasn't buying the cartoons that were needed. Also told the sales department to not to sell my program. I think she deliberately sabotaged the program, and I was aware of it. But I'd been on, almost 24 years. That I just, I said, if it isn't now, it'll be, next year.
Many shows at that time were acts that way. I find it hard to believe that some of the people that made us who we were, suddenly they say, oh, we don't need you anymore.
Local stations replaced live hosts with cartoons or nationally syndicated programs. It's not just the fans who felt the loss. Many of the cast and crew missed the host too.
I think they were as saddened about my being off the air as I was. They really were. And I see some of them occasionally, and they kind of say, oh gosh, I wish you were back.
I thought about it the other day, and it was really shocking. I said, a year from May, I will be 80 years old. And where did it go so fast? It's gone. And I feel 35. But realistically, I'm an old guy.
So what made these performers so successful? And how do they relate so well to kids?
I, of course, really love kids and love to be around them and like to relate to them. I never talked down to the kids. Some of the later people that were on, I just talked normal and treated them like grown-ups, I guess, or equals, and that worked for me.
For Stan and the people who worked with him, they saw kids, they could talk to kids, they could explain things to them, and it's just an amazing thing.
It's just something that some people have, I can't sing, I can't play the piano, I guess maybe I have a knack for talking to kids. Like I say, I don't talk down to them.
Their corny, slapstick jokes struck a chord with kids that will resonate for generations to come.
They say, gee, we wish you were on for our kids, because there's nothing on the air anymore like when you were doing your show. And then they mentioned JP too, and we wish JP was back on the air because they say our kids don't get to watch anything like that anymore.
It's not uncommon to hear middle-aged fans reminiscing about their childhood heroes.
You know, we didn't have 400 channels to choose from. We just had a couple, and these guys were with us morning and night every day. We got to watch them when we got up and eat our cereal, and coming home from school, and we grew up with them, and it was wonderful. They're part of our family.
I don't think there's any comparison. They did really fun things on TV when we were kids. Nowadays, there's not any imagination to the TV shows. It's just animated, fake stuff, really. And there was real stuff. We did real stuff as kids in the TV, so kind of felt more a part of things.
It's nice just to show the kids this is what I grew up with. And they're still the same. They're a little older. They're moving a little slower, but the same sense of humor. And it was fun because it was live TV, and it was very spontaneous. And
They say old soldiers don't die. They just fade away. You could say the same about old TV clowns and cowboys, too. Only these folks don't fade away either.
As long as the phone continues to ring, I'll continue to do it until I reach the point where it isn't fun anymore. And if it isn't fun anymore, don't do it. And I think that applies of any job. And if people don't like what they're doing, for gosh sakes, do something else.
It's always fun to be up there and getting them to sing these silly songs that I do, And I don't think I'll ever retire. I'll just keep on doing this till I croak.
Life has not slowed down for Stan Boreson, not one bit. He's run a series of businesses since leaving children's television all those years ago. And as a matter of fact, right now, he and his wife Barbara are running a tour operating company out of the University District. But don't worry, just like Elvis, the entertainer has not left the building. As a matter of fact, if you look around, you can find any number of his 15 cassettes and CDs that are still in circulation. For SCCtv, I'm Lowell Deo.
Well, gang, this about winds up 18 years here for me and 13 for Nomo at King Television. And we just wanted to say what a pleasure it's been working here all these 18 years. It's just gone by like a few weeks. We want to thank all the crew and all the directors and all the people here at King from the top right on down for being so nice to us for all these many years. And Doug, this is Doug Setterberg, who does Phineas and Foghorn and Hey You, and Hey You the most. And Nomo is very tired. She's 13. So we're going to go home and take a little rest. And thanks again, and be good kids. Zero Dr. Cooch o'clock and Hullabalooza Bub. That's the secret password that's used down at the club. Zero Dr. Cooch o'clock and Hullabalooza band. Now you are a member of TV Club with Stan. Bye, gang.